Welcome, everyone. My name's Anne, and Book Carnival is bringing you a wonderful author today with his newest book, With the Night Shift. This is your second book. Your first one was incredible. Also kept us all on the edge of the seat. You had, and I wanted to go back to that for just a second to tell you how much everyone appreciated it. They were expressing that while we were chatting, but there was so much, the book was so deep and had so much dimension to it that it wasn't just a mystery. It was so much more. And everybody was talking about that. And then we come to your next book, and it's even more so. The Night Shift is more complex from several points of view and never loses the grip that it has on the reader. You've done a wonderful job. How do you feel about it?
Well, first of all, thank you for that great introduction. I mentioned off camera that Book Carnival holds a dear place to me, as do you, Anne, and everyone here, just because you were such great early supporters before anybody heard of it. Every Last Fear. I think you reached out to me when you got an early copy, and it really, for somebody who was wringing their hands about how people would receive it, it gave me some level of comfort at the time. So I want to thank you for that, and thank everyone for all the support for that book. Every Last Fear was a good book for me. I was happy with how it turned out. But there was, with that comes the dreaded two words I kept hearing over and over from people, which is sophomore slump, which is a famous thing in the literary world, where you write a book and your next one kind of fizzles. So there was a little pressure there. And to be honest with you, it kind of got to me, and I had written nearly an entire other book after Every Last Fear, and I just really thought it didn't live up to that book. And I was coming up on my deadline, and I had a call with my agent first, and then my editor. My agent said, well, let's, I think they trust you, and let's talk to your editor. And I talked to my editor, and he basically said, our deadline's coming up, but do you have any other ideas? And I said, I have, a small idea. And this was late in the process. And he said, well, send me a chapter or something. And I quickly wrote what is now the prologue to The Night Shift, which is, starts with in 1999 on New Year's Eve. Those of us who can remember Y2K, it's at a video store, Blockbuster Video. Again, those of us of a certain age can certainly remember Blockbuster. And it's a grisly workplace crime. And in the opening, these kind of sweet employees of a video store, teenage employees, and their supervisor are attacked, and only one makes it out alive. And I sent him basically that prologue, which hasn't changed all that much. And to his credit, he said, I want to read this book, and let me talk and see what we can do to change the schedule. And they compressed the schedule for me, and I'm really happy they did. I was, it was down to the wire, but it was definitely worth starting over, basically, which is what I did.
Yeah, I know that the second book is always a challenge because you have less time and you have the pressure of having a success. That's why I was so amazed with this book. It's way above and beyond even the first one.
Oh, thank you. As I said, it was written very quickly, and I worked before I went to my editor at St. Martin's, I worked with a private editor, a freelance editor, mostly because I was so stressed about, the time pressure we had. And he really helped me keep on track. But when we were done, I said, well, this was probably the fastest I've ever done anything. And he said, sometimes you get these little gifts, and he'd been in publishing forever. You get these little gifts where you're confronted with these kind of time constraints, and that intensity of that actually translates to the page. And he said, I think that's what we got here. And so that made me feel a little better. I hope that's the case, but a little bit of an insight from someone who's been in the business a lot longer than me of what happened in this process.
No, it's a book that once you start it, you don't want anyone to talk to you, and you just want to read. You want everyone to go away. I was curious, not to throw you off the track, but I was wondering what you were doing on 1999, New Year's Eve. I was at Disneyland dancing in a Congo line with my granddaughter and daughter in the new year, but there were all these dire predictions.
Well, that's a lot more fun than my night. I remember I was with my wife and our friends at a bar basically on New Year's Eve, waiting for something to happen, the world to, the markets to collapse or something. And, I think there was a sense of kind of relief, a little bit of letdown, like, wow, we've been talking about this for, 2 years or whatever it was at the time. So it's a pretty boring story from my end, although it must have made an impression because, it stuck with me between that and, the blockbuster, when I was thinking of like this opening, which started the whole book of why did I sit down just one day after stressing out, I have this whole other book almost done, and decide just to start a book on Y2K in 1999 at a blockbuster video. And it kind of makes you think about, and I think a lot of writers have this, is like these little moments in your life that are completely mundane over, decades. And for some reason, just little things stick with you. And at some point you use them in your work. And that's kind of what happened with me. It was a completely mundane night on Y2K for me. And as far as Blockbuster goes, like anybody else back then, my wife and I would, was my girlfriend at the time, we would go to Blockbuster. And my main memory of Blockbuster Video was when we were both in college and we were dirt poor, and we returned to video, but for some reason said they didn't get it. And so they wanted to charge us like $80, which to us at the time was $1 million. And, I dealt with the manager, and he's a little bit, my recollection of him, and maybe it's embellished over the years, but it's a little bit like the Stevie character in the opening chapter, where he was kind of exasperated, a younger guy. His teenage employees were in the background goofing around, and he was trying to deal with them while dealing with me. And ultimately he just said, you know what, you don't got to pay, but you can't rent videos here anymore. And he kind of sent me on my way.
Not good.
Yeah. It was better than paying the $80 at the time, which was a real stressor in my life.
Yeah, but the video stores were king at that time.
Yeah.
That was the only place to get some other entertainment if you didn't want to go to the movies or couldn't afford it. Your style changed in this book as well. Your point of direction and different voices going back and forth. Quite a difference from the first book. And did that come to you easily as well?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really, it wasn't purposeful. And I felt that there are similarities with Every Last Fear in this book, one of which was purposeful. In Every Last Fear, those of you who read it, I did inserts of transcripts from the documentary that was at the center of that. And in this book, I'd been watching these YouTube videos of these travel vloggers. Just during the pandemic, we've all been kind of cooped up. And I keep, I don't know, on Facebook or somewhere, I saw one of these travel vlog people who, there's basically adventurer types, and they go off to these unusual places and they record themselves going to, off the beaten path countries and places, and they meet the local people and they drink with them and they do these things. And I started watching these videos, and I thought it would be fun to incorporate, well, the thriller writer in me, and thought, well, what if one of these people was a murderer or serial killer or something? That would be a pretty good job for them. They could travel around and transient and never get caught. But I really enjoyed watching those while I couldn't travel. And the type of people, I'm also fascinated by the type of people who would, basically quit their jobs and go on these adventures and record them on YouTube and get enough people interested in them as people and where they went that they can make a lot there, support themselves on that. And so in the night shift, I incorporated transcripts of a vlogger person who may or may not be a person of interest in the crimes in this case, in the cases in the book. But that was a long-winded answer to your question as far as the style. I think Every Last Fear had multiple points of view.
Mm-hmm.
Some people thought, wait, too many. But I had the multiple points of view here. The main style change I made is I made it the point of view characters would write in present tense instead of past tense. And so, the person asks something instead of asked, or they look instead of looked. And that wasn't purposeful. And I originally only had one character in that point of view. And ultimately we decided it was too jarring to flip around. But I do think I like that point of view. And the book I'm working on now is in that point of view, because I do think it gives it a presence. It's like, it's a little more, you're really kind of right there as it's happening, instead of talking about, something that even though you're reading it as it goes, it was a past tense. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It does. Were there any other challenges when you were putting this together? You said it came really quickly once you decided to switch.
Yeah, I think there's always challenges with any book. Every Last Fear, it was, what the ending was going to be. I really, had different endings and ways to go with that. For this book, it was really the time pressure, and but it really, it ultimately just. My wife says with both books, both, she said it's not been that different, but with both, she said, I really didn't think you were going to get done. We were like, we had 100 pages for a really long time. And then we have a month to go. And she's starting to feel like, maybe it's not going to happen. And for whatever reason, I don't know if it's the pressure that requires me to really just pull everything together or what it is. But I've been lucky, knock on wood, because I'm behind again on the current one. And so and now my wife doesn't, necessarily, when I say I'm under a lot of pressure, she said, you've worked it out. It all works out at the end.
So she's getting confidence, right?
You're getting a little overconfident, I would say, overconfidence in this one.
When you developed your different characters in this book, did you take them from people you knew or composites?
I never base a character exactly on a person. I think in Every Last Fear, I obviously, at the time I was writing it, had a son in his 20s at NYU, like the main character. So I wouldn't say the Matt Pine character is my son, but they do share. Basically, I stole a lot of the experiences he had, the places he would go, some of those, playing chess in the park, that type of thing. But he's not Matt Pine, and none of my characters are real people. Kind of goes back to what I was saying about, over your life, you meet people, and good or bad, people make an impression that somebody says this, or you overhear something, or a friend of a friend tells you about somebody, and it makes an impression. And I think it's kind of Frankenstein's monster for me. Is like, I can't pinpoint any one person that I've ever based a character on, but a lot of my characters, I do think, kind of incorporate things that I've seen or heard or know about people over, my lifetime. So I think that's right. And some of it's just, guesswork. I have in this book, for those who haven't read it, I have 3 point of view characters. One is named Ella, who is the victim or the survivor of the first mass workplace attack at the Blockbuster. She was a teenager. All of her coworkers are murdered. She miraculously survives. And it's 15 years later in the story, and she's brought in because there's another crime in the same town, at an ice cream store, and all the employees are murdered, and there's one survivor, and she's become a therapist, somebody who wants to help people because of the trauma she experienced, and they bring her in to talk with this reluctant, kind of traumatized teenage girl. And for that, it was really just trying to imagine what somebody who'd go through something, terribly traumatic, and who never really dealt with it because of her family situation. And so she's a good person. She went into a profession wanting to help people, but she makes a lot of really reckless decisions in this book, in her personal life. And I wanted to see her evolution to be finally to make peace with what happened, and maybe that making peace comes from helping somebody who experienced a similar trauma. The other point of view character is a guy named Chris, and he is the brother of the person that everyone thinks killed everybody at the Blockbuster video. And right after the murder, the police identify him quickly. He's a high school classmate of at least one of the victims, but he quickly disappears, and he hasn't been seen again for like 15 years. And so you just, he's on the run, you don't know what's happened to him. But he had this younger brother, and they were both in an abusive home. And so it's 15 years later, and what happens to this kid whose brother is kind of the town's notorious serial killer, and he's in an abusive home already, and he has become a public defender. And so for that, you just draw on I'm a lawyer. I drew on just kind of experiences or people I know who are public defenders. And the last point of view character is anybody who read Every Last Fear. It's a familiar character. It's an FBI agent named Sarah Keller. And she was a centerpiece in Every Last Fear. Hadn't really intended to ever bring her back. But as I was writing this, I needed a law enforcement person, and I did a chapter trying out Keller, and it just kind of fit. And my challenge is that murder is, if you read a lot in this genre, or you're in law enforcement, or you're a lawyer, you know that murder typically isn't a federal offense. You usually don't have the FBI unless there's somebody crossing state lines, or it's a serial killer or something.
Sure.
And so I had a challenge like, well, how did it make sense to bring Keller in? And so for that, I had to do a bit of research and found talked to some really kind of prominent lawyers in New Jersey where this is set, and they kind of gave me the hook for that. So those are the main characters, and for each, it's just it's imagination, but it's drawing on just life experiences, and doing your best you can as you write and rewrite to try and make people suspend disbelief and believe they're real people and want to learn about them.
Oh, you did that very successfully, and I was delighted to see her back. She adds intensity, but she also adds some humor, which was good. And it was nice to have her back there and dealing with what she was dealing with. The book is complex enough that it's hard to. You've done a great job talking about it. I didn't want to ask too many questions that would give things away.
Sure.
But you've done a great job of explaining it. You mentioned that you're already started on another book.
Yeah, publishers these days, at least in the thriller mystery genre, they really hope for a book a year. Mm-hmm. And so that's the schedule I'm on. My next book's scheduled to come out next March. I'm hopeful that I'm not in breach of contract and that happens. But yeah, so I've been working on that, and going slower than I would like, but hopefully I will pull it out, as I said, as I have done in the past. But it's been a fun, it's always a challenge. It's fun. My latest, sometimes too, when I feel like I'm not on a roll, getting pages down, doing a little research in the middle, taking a break from the actual writing, can kind of jumpstart you. It can get your mind thinking a different way, or at least give you a break. And so I had my there's a tie-in to my wife on this because we had our 30-year wedding anniversary in January, and we were set to go to Broadway show and do all these things, but COVID, everything got canceled. And as I'm working on the book, in the new book, I have unusually enough, I have a scene in a West Virginia coal mine where there's somebody's attacked in a coal mine in a weird way. It's a long story, but so I decided, well, I'm gonna do a little research. And so I reach out to some coal mining experts, and they're super gracious. So we go, the only trip we've had, we go out to West Virginia, we get a tour at West Virginia University. It has this great coal mining safety program, and they were really nice. They took me around, showed me safety stuff, give me the stuff I need for my book. But my wife's like, this is it, 30 years, West Virginia coal mine is the anniversary present. This is really Mr. Romantic here. So.
Okay, hopefully you made up for that later on.
She will say I haven't, but we'll just say what I have.
Okay. Have a question here, which I find amusing. Why did you decide the FBI agent would be pregnant with twins?
Yeah, so that's a question I've gotten a couple times, because I think some readers have been like, this guy doesn't know what it's like to be pregnant. Is you don't work until the last minute, and then who is so this is one where it was really a necessity because of the timeline. Keller was in Every Last Fear. Mm-hmm. She had twins who were 5 years old. This book is set in 1999 and 2015. Just out of time, I had to have her be pregnant. And so then I thought, well, this is kind of interesting. It might say a little bit about Keller that she's working late into her term. And so that's really how that came about. In the early draft, she was like 8.5 months or so pregnant. Then we got some feedback. Maybe, I don't know what I'm talking about. So we dialed that back a little bit in the final draft. I don't know that it's going to please everybody. But my point of reference is my wife. She was like, she worked until literally I think within an hour, she had our children, all three of them, within an hour when we got to the hospital, and she worked like the day up to there. So yeah. I didn't have a great reference point. She didn't have twins, and I think everybody has a different pregnancy. So yeah, but the short answer is I made her pregnant because I had to because of the timeline.
Right, and the previous book. Yeah. No, it's interesting, and it adds another dimension because of the reaction when she's interviewing someone or challenging, whether it's the other law enforcement or whether it's some that they think is a possibly guilty person. But it adds another dimension, and it makes it more human.
Yeah, I love the Keller character, and I thought it made her. I think the reality of it. My understanding, anyway, of the reality of an FBI agent's day to day is it is not an action-packed, pulling your. Most agents, I don't think, ever fire their weapon. Right. And so I when I was doing it, I was going from the reference point, like I said, of my wife, who's a teacher, and she would go to work and it's be on her feet all day. And I thought, well, it's a little bit like that. But I do agree, like she gets put in these like really physically stressful situations. But I thought it gave her a chance to, her husband's worried about her. It adds a little bit of, kind of worry. And I think once you invest in her towards the end of the book, when some things happen, I hoped it would add a little bit of suspense. But she is my favorite, one of my favorite characters to write, and her husband, Bob.
Yes, I agree. There's that family touch. But women do, if everything is right, work right up until they have to leave because, for several reasons, because they enjoy what they're doing, and the other is sitting at home waiting. That's not good either. Yeah. Plus you lose, particularly in the field she's in, you can lose. That causes you to be set back as far as your career is concerned.
Sure. Yeah.
I thought it was all really good. What or who influenced your desire to write?
Well, that's a good question. I was a practicing lawyer for a lot of years, and but I always gravitated to the writing side of the law. I wasn't somebody who craved to be in front of a jury or trial work. I always like kind of the behind the scenes, write briefs, and I ultimately ended up as an appellate lawyer, which is mostly, getting a case after it's been through, really the ringer of the system, and telling a story that you have to take massive amount of material and you have to condense it down into a pretty tightly condensed narrative. And it's, at the end of the day, it's a story. And in my free time, I wasn't one of these people who, from the moment they were, a little kid, was wanted to be a writer. I didn't know any writers, and it wasn't something that I'd ever even considered. But I was a big reader, and I don't know any novelists, successful novelists, who aren't really big readers. And I was a big reader in the genre, and so I started, noodling around. And there was something kind of freeing about in my law job. You're writing a story, but you're constrained because you're constrained by what happened and the facts. Now you can put the facts together in a way that you feel is the most favorable story for your client. But at the end of the day, you got the facts that they are. And I started writing, and there's something freeing about, well, the facts aren't going how I like. I can just kill this person. I can, I can do, anything I want. I don't know, this isn't working. I can just set it in another city. I can make, and so there was something fun in that. And
I think the power.
Yeah. And then you get the bug. I talk to my writer friends. It's just something you get the bug, and I just can't imagine not doing it, and it becomes a big part of your life. And for me, I'm never not thinking about the book in some way. It's always in the back of my mind. Either it's I have to go to some event or something, a kid function or a neighborhood party, or no matter when it is, when I wake up or when I'm laying awake at night, my mind's turning on the book. And it's just, at this point, it's an occupational hazard. But even before I was paid to do it, it was just something I loved to do, and so that's kind of I just kept doing it. There wasn't a single person that I said I want to be this writer. Mm-hmm. It was really just the joy of it, and so that being said, there's been just. The other thing that's been great in this journey for me is I was a lawyer, as I said, for a lot of years, a lot of great friends, but most of my friends were in the legal community. Right. And it's been just a joy to, I think as you get older, my experience is when you get older, you have kids, it's harder to make friends. When you're younger, you're in college or in high school, you make friends all the time. But as you get older, your friends often become like the parents of who your kids' friends are, instead of, and it's not as easy. It wasn't for me to make friends. And then I had this whole community who really just, they're a really welcoming group, and just go out of their way. I have just had people who have nothing to gain. Lee Child has zero to gain by helping me, but just, he goes out of his way to help. Karen Slaughter has nothing, zero to gain. But there's a real community, and I think sense of that, and that really surprised me. But it also really has been a true joy. And some of my closest friends now are other writers.
Yes, it was one of the delights of having a bookstore, was to discover that authors that I had admired for so long were truly really nice people. And they always promoted other authors. They were always there for people. So that's been a real joy. And I think it's unique to the writing community, and particularly to the mystery writers.
Yeah, I think that what surprised me at first is technically, if you just think about it as a pure business matter, we're all competitors. I mean, we if somebody buys my book, they may, they may have a certain amount of money to buy books. And so it may be that's, they may not buy the book of the person that is helping me try and sell my book. But there's zero of that kind of mentality I've encountered. And, it's just, I've been really impressed with that. And I'm pretty active in the International Thriller Writers Organization, who I just can't say enough about, who just helps so many people achieve their dreams of being a writer, but are just endlessly supportive they've been endlessly supportive of me, but I know so many others.
It sounds great. And when you make it big, it inspires others to do the same thing, whether it's early or late in their career. It makes a big difference.
That's right, and that's the beauty of writing is it doesn't, it doesn't matter how old you are. If you have a good story in you, you can start this. I have a friend I met, a writer friend I met before the pandemic. I workshopped every last year at this in Italy, and this really neat program called the Leopardi conference, and it was more of like, excuse to go to Italy with my wife, my kids game and everything, but it really helped. And the person running it was a writer who I really admired, and they helped with the opening chapters. When I was there, another one of the writers, her name's Stephanie Ganci, and she had basically had a big health issue in her 60s, early 60s. I think she was early 60s. And she had to stop working, and it was really difficult for her because she was like one of these people. She lived in New York City and had a, booming career and everything. And so she decided she wanted to write a novel. So she said she went to the bookstore and bought a book called, How to Write a Novel. And she wrote a novel. I mean, it kills people like me who, wrote a bunch of books nobody wanted, but she wrote her first book based on this How to Write a Novel book, and she sold it to a big publisher. And so she's since had another book come out and had nice success. So it's one of these. It's very difficult to get a big book published. Don't get me wrong, but they're not. Nobody. It doesn't matter what school you went to. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter where you live. Those type of things. If you can write a story that somebody wants to read, you have the opportunity to be an author, and that's really great. I mean, I think
it is. Now, I heard when you were talking past tense. Are you still doing any lawyering?
I am still. People ask me all the time, do you, are you gonna quit your day job, that type of thing? And for me, I really love both, and I have great colleagues. I get great cases. I have a lot of my cases are in the U.S. Supreme Court, and it's very challenging. And the only downside is there's only so many hours in the day, and so I have cut down. My law firm's been very great about my writing career, and have been pretty understanding when I need to take breaks and this and that. But I have no intent. I mean, I think as long as I can do it, I would like to do both, because I think they both bring they both bring me happiness in different ways, and each feeds the other. The thing about being a Washington D.C. lawyer is I meet a lot of really interesting people, and I go and I learn in my cases about areas that I never know anything about, and that feeds the novelist in me. And the clients have been really receptive. At first I worried, like, are the clients going to, how are they going to feel about a thriller writer killing people and in these books? What are they going to think about me when they read them? Are they going to project and think, wow, this guy's got a lot going on in there that I don't want to deal with? But they've been actually really, I think overall the reception's been really nice. They like to have somebody creative, and a lot of them are readers, and so they get a kick out of it. And so far so good.
I think it's wonderful to get feedback that way. Do you did you want to talk at all about?
Do I want to talk about what? I'm sorry, missed that part.
Yeah, the next book, or do you know?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't worked out how to best explain it, but I'll give it just the gist of it, which is
Just a pinch.
There is I really need to refine this and practice it, so forgive me. But the gist of it is it's 25 years ago. There's a group of kids in a foster home it's an abusive foster home and has all kinds of troubling things going on. The book begins 25 years later. They've all lost touch. the kids. They don't, not like they've stayed together. And they reunite because somebody's killing them one at a time.
Okay.
All right. And so the question is, what, they kind of find each other from this process. And, I mentioned the West Virginia coal mine before. I tried to this time, and I hope it works, is to have the grown-up versions of the kids, at least the point of view characters, have kind of interesting jobs. And so one of them is a TV producer who runs like a reality show that follows coal miners around. And this is there's a show called Gold Miners or Gold Rush that follows gold miners around. And so he's kind of, and it happens to be my son's best friend from kindergarten on. His dad is a producer on that show, so it gave me access to somebody in that world. And then I have an aging kind of person who was a rock star in like the 80s, 90s, who's kind of on the kind of sad tail end of their career, where they play cruise ships and do things like that on nostalgia tours, which is more a homage to myself, because I was once wanted to be a rock star and didn't happen. And then I have a couple other kind of unique jobs as the grown-up people. And so I try and hopefully that'll be entertaining, or, getting insights into those worlds. But at the end of the day, it's another murder, people are murdered and we got to figure out why kind of story.
But it's coming from a different angle that you don't often hear about. So that's what I like. I try a different way.
Yeah, I mean, what my goal has been with this journey has been to try and write, there's so many great thrillers out there, and it's so many great thriller writers. The challenge for me is like to try and do something that is different. And it's a real challenge. And, you worry that it's not going to work, but each of the books I've tried to do something that I thought was a little different from the market. But you never know until the last page and people start talking about you on the internet.
Well, you've certainly done it with the first two books, so I think you're off to a good start. I'm going to open it up and do galley view again. I hope the noise isn't too bad for everybody to ask questions. And if we hear a lot of static, I'll go back. Yeah, I can hear it already. There we go. So anybody who has questions.
I'll let Karen go first. She had her hand up before me.
Yeah, it's trying to get in there. I'm one of those front row kids. I want to know about this second book that wasn't going anywhere, and you put it aside and quickly wrote The Night Shift. I want to know what's going to happen to that. Is it going to get reworked? Or, as I heard one other author talk about, her first book became something that she put away and uses for parts. I loved that term. What about your second one?
That's a great question. And I don't know what will happen. I have had friends, Steve Barry talks about how he had written 7 books that didn't sell. And then he had this big hit of a book. And he said he would go back to the other ones and basically do what you said, like they're good for parts, my personal experience has been the first book I ever wrote, beginning to end myself. I was, this is 20 years ago. And I thought it was just a masterpiece. This thing was great. I got an agent, and the agent was really enthusiastic, and we're going to sell this book, and there's going to make a movie out of it. And it got me really excited. And then no publisher wanted it. It was just, and it was super discouraging. Then I had young kids at the time. I was working my law practice. So I just thought, this isn't for me. I'm not cut out for this. And so I really didn't try again for 5 or 6 years to write another novel. And I wish if I could go back in time and talk to myself, I would, obviously take a different path, because I think you learn so much and you get better as you do it. So anyway, long story short is, when I sold my first book, I thought, this is great. My second book, I don't have to worry. I'm not gonna do. I could turn this thing in tomorrow. I have my masterpiece from 10 years ago. I'm gonna dig this thing out, and I found it and I read it, and I gotta tell you, it was terrible. I can't believe anybody. I can't believe looking at it now. I can't believe I got an agent from it. So I think it's all in your perspective. I thought that when the writer themselves think the book that they're working on isn't there, then I think that's beyond a red flag. It's one thing to have your readers, beta readers or agent or editors kind of not be there with it. But for me, I just felt it, and I felt I was forcing it, and I felt like it was going to just be a letdown after Every Last Fear, which I was really proud of. So I don't know. I'm going to put it aside. My prediction is when I get desperate 3 years from now and I'm coming up on the deadline, I'm going to pull it out and think it's going to save me, and I'm going to have the same reaction I did to that book 20 years ago. So we'll see. This is a short.
My question was how you come up with the titles, or is someone else giving you the titles? And then based on the camaraderie you were talking about among thriller and mystery writers, who are some of your favorites?
Great. On the titles, it's a little mix. Every Last Fear was my title, but it evolved. It came in, and actually it was a writer friend. I had a variation of it, and a writer named Barry Lancet, who wrote a great book called Japantown that was a big hit.
Yes, we love him too.
Yeah. Barry's just he's probably, as I said, I made new friends. I'd say Barry has become one of my closest friends I've made as an adult, and he lives in Japan, so it's not like we're hanging out every weekend, but we Zoom, and whenever he's in town, or I joke that when he was researching a book and he came to DC and he said, I really want to know what the drive from the airport is like, and he was already here, so he made me drive him to the airport when he wasn't catching the flight, and then drive him back in DC traffic. And as we're driving, I'm like, I want to see you take some notes. I'm driving you to the airport. You're not catching a flight here. Let's focus, because he was talking. Anyway, I digress. So on the title for The Night Shift, that was my editor's idea. I had the title as The Broken Places, which is a quote at the beginning of the novel from A Farewell to Arms, which I thought was a pretty good title, but they didn't think it was thrillery enough, and so I agree, they came up with a better title, and it helped with the cool cover they came up with. We've been playing with the title for the new book. I had called it Reunion because it was, as I mentioned, it's kids from long ago, and they're reunited in this awful way. But I don't think that's going to make the cut. And so we will see where it finally lands. I think we're very, very close. So the short answer to your question is it's a combination. I did an event with Sarah Pekkanen, who wrote, who's in a writing team, just been blowing up with her books, and the other day, and she has a new book called The Golden Couple, which is great. I've read it, and she said at the event, I thought it was interesting that her editor came up with a title, and they built the book around the title, which was a pretty interesting way to go. So
really,
yeah.
I think the cover on your new book is wonderful.
Yeah, I really thought they did a nice job with the cover. I liked Every Last Fear cover. There was a cover. My editor made the classic mistake, because we've become pretty good friends, and for Every Last Fear, he showed me kind of like the 4 different options, and I fell in love with just one of them, and I just and then it turned out they wanted to pick what became the final cover, and I was really just it was a whole thing, and so for The Night Shift, he just showed me one cover. This is the cover.
You will
I'm not dealing with that again.
Hold it up again for us. Hold
Say
the
that
book
again?
up again.
Oh,
Hold
sure.
that book up again.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
And it has a neon impression when you're holding it.
it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually on the ebook. It really has a cool kind of neon when you're on your devices. So it was nice. But they're super talented people. I'm just always in awe of the number of creative, talented people that it takes to get, from this, weird head to the bookshelves. It's just, and there's just so many people really trying hard and don't always nail it, but really thoughtful, creative, passionate people. And that's who you want in your life.
You do indeed. And I've been watching or noting that wonderful bookcase behind you. Now, are those all law books, or is there something there that you like?
This is the secret of me. Behind me is a terrible, dirty, like, wall of my office. This is a fake background that just looks so real.
Oh, yes, it does. Had me fooled.
Saves me cleaning up my office for the Zoom meetings.
Okay. This has been a wonderful conversation. Do we have any more questions for him before we let him go and keep writing wonderful books?
Yes, I are like world situations and or the uptick in crime in various cities that's getting all, to the forefront. Are those any inspirations for you?
No, I mean, I try to, I'm trying to stay positive, and in all everything, weirdly enough, because I write these, books where people are killed and everything, but I try and just keep I live in Washington, D.C. Overall, it's a safe place. There's danger here. There's danger everywhere. There's good people here. There's not good people here, but I'm trying, like, go with a positive outlook on all of it, because otherwise I've been cooped up like we all have for 2 years, and I think I'd go crazy if I got too down the rabbit hole of focusing on some of the wrong. That's not to say we shouldn't, and people shouldn't do things to address the problems we're having, but I try not to bleed that stuff into my work. Although it is funny, I did a little video for one of the genre websites. Asked me for the night shift. They said, "Oh, can you go out at night and do a little video of you out in the night in DC and hold up a book and say something?" And so I thought it'd be a good night to get my sons to come with me and spend a night out, go out to dinner and everything. So we go out and we film it, and I say, and then my sons say, "Oh, you hold the camera on us, Dad," and they both said, "It's freezing out here, crime is surging, but my dad makes us come out here because he really needs to sell this book." Which they included in the video, which I thought was great. It's a crime tie-in.
Very clever. Can't thank you enough for your time today. It's been wonderful.
Oh, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Really. And we look forward to the next one. And hopefully next time it can truly be in person.
I hope so. And I may be out your way because my youngest son is graduating from high school, and we are doing our college trips. He's dead set on California, so I may be out your way more often than not. So fingers
Our
crossed.
weather is better.
That is true. That's what he keeps saying to me. Yeah. His mother is not pleased with the distance, so we're having a family discussion. But my guess is he's going to be out your way in the sun.
Well, anytime you're anywhere near us and you know about it, let me know, because we'll do something.
I will definitely do that. I'd love to stop by and see the bookstore in person. Love everything about it.
We'd love to have you there, and even if you didn't have a book, we'd just love to visit with you. So
Great.
be sure and not miss us.
I will take you up on that, and next time I am there, I will be coming by.
And tell your wife, we just have these wonderful colleges out here, and these kids do such a good job.
Yeah, she's heard better pitches than that, Anne.
Oh, I'm sure.
From a 17-year-old. 17-year-old's got a whole spreadsheet PowerPoint presentation. We've been hearing a lot, but
good for him. I admire that. Again, thank you again so much, and it was just wonderful.
No, great. Thank you all for coming. Great to meet you.
And you'll be on YouTube later.
All right.
Okay.
Great.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Now.
Bye.